Well, what we did, the assignment was in order to pick a modern and ancient organism that are analogs of one another that are very similar, to compare the two, pick one modern organism that's on the endangered species list and try to compare it to the ancient organism in order to prevent the extinction of the modern organism.
Okay, right.
So we chose the archelon, which was the largest sea turtle ever to exist, and the loggerhead sea turtle, which is currently the largest sea turtle.
They were both very similar creatures, especially when it comes to predation and prey. So the archelon, being in the Cretaceous period, had to deal with things such as mosasaurs in the ocean, but they also were preyed upon by sharks, which is the biggest predator of the modern-day loggerhead. As for prey, they both feed on the same exact things, soft-bodied organisms such as jellyfish, clams, mussels, and things of the sort. We've got our models, the archelon and the loggerhead, and they are to scale. The loggerhead was about 2 to 3 feet, so our toy's 2 to 3 inches, I think, and then the archelon was 15 to 18 feet, so that's also to scale. It's on top of nests. This is what their nests look like, where they laid their eggs. They would kind of bury them in the ground in the sand. And then the backdrops are just paintings of the creatures that they dealt with in the ocean.
We focused on the horseshoe crab for this project, and also our ancient organism is a eurypterid. The interesting thing about this project is that both of our organisms did exist at the same time, instead of our ancient organism existing before the modern one. The horseshoe crab is over 400 million years old, so it's one of the oldest organisms.
It's the living fossil.
He is. He's a living fossil, which is another thing. What we're talking about today is that they have survived for 400 million years without having to adapt barely at all, and now they're at risk because of people, because of human beings, and that's why they're at risk, because we harvest them for their blood, and their blue blood is used for medical purposes.
And that's one of the things that we could do potentially to save the species, is put regulations on the harvesting methods and the poaching methods to get the eggs and things, because right now they are somewhat endangered, but they're at low risk. So there's enough time, if action is taken now, to save the species.
So we've got the manatee and the dugong as our modern organism here on the right, and then on the left we have both that and the PaleoParadoxia or Demostelia.
50 million years ago and
current day.
Okay. Seagrass bed.
We're just imagining that the area itself, like the actual structure, remains the same, but there have been climate changes and things of the sort. And what we really focused on is how they feed and what pressures are affecting the way they feed and the way they graze.
So we have the two. This one is from the PaleoParadoxia from 50 million years ago, and this is a modern organism. So this explains how the PaleoParadoxia went extinct, a mass extinction due to both environmental and competition from the manatee.
We figured, okay, we're both architecture majors. We've got some creativity. She's got the brains. We'll just design something. We used InDesign. And so we kind of made a little bit of an exaggerated graphic. Obviously, without us here, it wouldn't make much sense. It would just be some organisms and some oddly shaped seagrass beds, but the actual shape of the seagrass bed matter, and the location of things matters, and so that's why we're here.
Our species was the African wild dog, Lycaon pictus. It is the only living species in this genus now. It resides in the sub-Saharan Africa or the grasslands.
Their habitat is kind of dwindling because of both human interaction with their environment, and also the climate change is drying out the air where they live, and they need the humidity for the grasses to grow and for the wildebeest and their prey to have a food supply. So the climate change is really dwindling down their habitat. This is really similar to what their ancient relatives had to deal with, because there was also climate, like a global warming back then, that pushed the air drier and made the grasslands die out.
We've tried to get as many mediums as possible here. I really like the poster that Miranda put together. This trivia game, we pick your question there, and if you get it right, you get a piece of Laffy Taffy.
Okay.
We set up a Twitter handle to raise awareness about the African one.
More facts so that we can answer the trivia questions effectively.
Right.
And we've set up a poll as we have laid our mitigation plan out today as to whether you guys think that's going to work or not.